From the Arkansas Sports Network, it's an in-depth Arkansas Razorbacks podcast. Featuring the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Brad Caldwell. Around here, we call him the Rain Man of Arkansas Razorback Sports, Mr. Jerran Miller. And finally, he wears his hair upside down, and he pushes all the buttons, Mr. Bill Harshaw. Everyone get ready, because you're now connected to the Razor Wire.
And welcome into another edition of the Razor Wire here from Arkansas Sports Network. Brad Caldwell, Jerran Miller with me. I'm Bill Harshaw. Guys, we've had a kind of a slow week in Razorback athletics with the baseball team kind of having an all week off kind of thing. But, you know, we had that big matchup with South Carolina. And I guess that's where we're going to start talking about things today.
Man, it was a great weekend for the Razorback baseball team. Anytime that you could win a series on the road against a top 10, top-ish team, they were 11th and in most polls there. It's big. Arkansas has done that a lot this year. we're going to talk about this sometime about how Arkansas and Vanderbilt stack up. I'm excited about that. But we're going to leave that off today's show. But man, what a series win it was in South Carolina.
It's a big win in South Carolina. You know, they lost the one of those games. You dropped one of them, but still haven't lost the series.
Yeah, we came out, got the big win on game one, had Monk starting, and Cops came in that first time, was magnificent, finished that game out, and then we got on to game two, and it was that big doubleheader. Those are always tough especially when you're the road team, and South Carolina took one from us, but we bounced back in game two, and I liked what Van Horn said to Phil Elson during the break between those games about, hey man, we're just going to sit here in a dugout. We just got to tough it out. South Carolina, they're in their clubhouse. We don't know what they're doing. They can change uniforms, take showers, whatever. We're just going to have to out tough them and see if we can get this done in game three. And they absolutely did, 5-1, and big win there. And Cops came in again after the good start by trying to remember who started that game.
Wicklander started.
Yeah, Wicklander. 7 innings was awesome. And Cops came back in and just retired every single batter. I mean, you can't get any hotter than he is right now. Of course, he got Player of the Week because of that in the SEC, co-Player of the Week. And that's huge.
It is big
win against number 11 South Carolina.
It is. It's a big thing. And, of course, Dave Van Horn did speak with the media following that win, the series win over South Carolina. Here's what Coach Dave Van Horn had to say.
First off, just a really good job by our pitchers all weekend. For the most part, all 3 games, they gave us an opportunity to win. And even in the first game today, Peyton Paulette pitched really well, 5+. And, you take away maybe 1 walk, 2 walks, I think that the outcome might have been a little bit different. They put together the big inning, and we brought Monk back in, and he walked a batter on 4 pitches, and we were in trouble a little bit. And game 2, just another great job on the mound. Patrick Wicklander, I mean, he goes 7 full innings, doesn't walk a batter, strikes out 5, and just pitched ahead in the count all night and gave us a chance to kind of chip away and beat a good team and a good pitcher in the most important game of the series. It was a long day. We had a 2-hour, break between games. Our team, we didn't have anywhere to go. We just sat in the dugout and in the bullpen, and South Carolina, they disappeared. And we just toughed it out. I mean, I'm just proud of them. Yeah, the third inning of the second game was huge for us. I think we got 4 hits that inning. I think we had 3 in a row. We didn't get a lot of hits after that. We had to scratch and fight for those last 3 runs. There was off maybe 1 hit, fielder's choice. I mean, we just some walks mixed in there, and they've got a really good bullpen. They brought a couple of really good arms out of the pen tonight, and they held us down a little bit. But it was tough trying to score runs. When Wallace hit that ball, I felt like it was going out off the bat. was a huge swing for us to give us a 4-1 lead at the time, because we were just up 1 before that swing. And that's when you could start thinking a little bit more about, how many more outs do we need before we can go to Kevin? Yeah, we knew that they were really good at home. We knew their record here was 16-2. And, it is. Sometimes teams are, most of the time teams are a lot better at home. Very, very seldom does a team play better on the road than at home. And usually that doesn't last very long. Usually when you know your own ballpark and surface and the wind and your fans are helping you, you're going to win at home. So another good road series win. And again, I don't think our guys get too wound up about everything and where we're at. They just play. Yeah, I just think they like to play. They like to win. They fight to win, even when it's not pretty sometimes. They don't care where I put them in the batting order. And, the pitchers, I think they felt like they had something to prove because, they haven't, I don't know, maybe they're not getting the respect that they've earned so far this year. They came down here and they pitched really well.
So that was Coach Dave Van Horn talking about the big South Carolina win. And, Duran, you were talking about Wicklander. He was looking really good up on the mound.
Yeah, definitely. And that's about 3 starts in a row. He was the guy last year, was struggling a little bit. The season ended early to COVID. We were starting to see, we had all this promise last year. We were expecting Nolan and Wicklander to really kind of carry us forward after we lost Campbell, after he moved on to the major leagues. And, there was starting to be a little struggle there. Now we still had Casey Martin and we still had can't think of his name.
Hesse Kerstad.
Yeah, Kerstad. But, those guys, they were awesome in the lineup, but we were starting to see some things kind of unravel a little bit. So coming into this year, though, another year for those guys to mature a little bit. You thought they were going to lead us, and right out of the gate, they're not starting. They're not in the starting lineup. And now that it's starting to come full circle, and you've got Wicklander just really pitching his best he has all season.
Is Wicklander the most important person on this team? That's my question. I mean, I know that he is not the best player. I know that Cops right now is untouchable in relief, but because of where the starting pitching has been for the majority of the season, where you've been kind of plugging and playing and not really knowing who's going to do what and who's going to start here. When you get a third game like that out of Patrick Wicklander, a guy that has that kind of starting experience, to me, that says that if he can do that going forward, it makes it even tougher for teams to beat Arkansas down the road, which at this point, Arkansas is the odds-on favorite to win the national championship, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, definitely. So. He, without Wicklander, we don't win that series at South Carolina. We're not still won every series in the SEC. Without a doubt, he's very important. So, yeah, that's 100% agree with you, Brad.
Now, Dave Van Horn did also talk about Wicklander during that press conference. Let's listen into what Dave Van Horn had to say.
2 great outings in a row, really maybe 3 good outings in a row. And what was working for him is that he just threw everything for a strike. And he didn't throw a lot of changeups, threw a lot of fastballs, worked them in and out, got ahead in the count. Then he would elevate some pitches, 1-2, 0-2, and he got a few strikeouts there, got some fly balls, got some first pitch outs, and it allowed him to stay in the game because he kept his pitch count down. And I thought Casey called a great game. We didn't mess with Casey too much. Him and Pat were working great together, and we let him roll. His fastball was running a lot, and it was sinking as well. And then he would elevate it, and they were swinging. They swing, and they swing hard. They don't get cheated. And I don't know, a lot of movement. We're off to the side, so we can really only see up and down for the most part. But it had to be movement for them to swing and miss at any time.
So again, that's Coach Dave Van Horn talking about Wicklander during that South Carolina matchup. And you're right, Brad. He is one of the most important people on this team. He's a leader, and the guys are expecting him to perform, and out of turn, he expects them to perform for him on defense. So Wicklander is kind of the lifeblood of this team right now.
So when you look at what's going forward, I think that you've got Zeb Vermillion. He came back and pitched. Obviously, he wasn't himself yet. You've got Connor Noland is going to come back at some point and be a part of the staff as well. If you're getting Wicklander to pitch well, Peyton Paulette is pitching well now. They're talking, and we'll look ahead of this. We don't even know who the third starter is going to be against LSU. But if you can get the kind of starting pitching that Wicklander gave you, does this team have any weaknesses?
Right. That to me was the biggest concern moving forward, is having that guy that you just know you got him. He's going to hold him to a run or two at the most, and he's that shutdown guy. And if Wicklander can keep stepping forward, you're 100% right. Does it have any weaknesses? Because this lineup is so good top to bottom. And it's a little not great towards the end, but you still got guys in there that are experienced, like Casey Opitz. He's usually batting around 7th or 8th, and he's always been clutch for the most part. And that's what I like about Casey, is when it's really on the line, how many times does he come up with a big hit? But Wicklander, Paulette, we lost game 2, which was the first game of that doubleheader. But Paulette, man, he pitched really well. I mean, he pitched great again. And he's had a couple outings that were kind of, not up to, what he's been doing. But other than that, he's really pitching well right now. And if we can get Vermillion back healthy as well, and Nolan, and we'll talk more about that later. But I think Nolan's going to get a chance this weekend to get back out there for us.
Yeah, Dave Van Horn did say that Nolan is pitching and is going to be available this weekend at LSU. So that's going to be big, to see Connor Nolan in his comeback and see what he can do. But you also have Cops. Cops is that guy that, Duran, you were talking about that starting pitcher that you can count on. Well, Cops is like the starting closer that you can count on.
Yeah.
This guy comes in and just shuts things down, and it's like putting handcuffs on people. And he's a big time kid.
Oh yeah. He really reminds me of he's different than Matt Cronin, but you could depend on Cronin to come in and get it done. Thing about Cronin was he threw so hard that if you close your eyes and happen to line one up, it was gone. Cops, this guy, you're going to dig him out of the dirt, and he's going to fool you. And it was obvious that South Carolina, and that's a good lineup, and they were 16-2 at home going into that series with us. Now they're 17-4. They were not seeing the ball come out of his hands. They were so full. They didn't know if it was a fastball, and he basically threw nothing but curveballs. I mean, he would throw the fastball here and there, just enough to keep them on their toes. But, I mean, they really could not pick that ball up.
Slider and two-seam fastball from Cops. We talk about Cronin. Cronin was a guy that came at you with fastball slider. I would say that Cops is just as dominant right now, just as dominant. I mean, it's really unbelievable. I mean,
right.
The improvement that you've seen out of him throughout the years is just another testament to the ability that this staff has to develop guys. He wasn't this type of guy last year for the few games that we saw him in, and then
right.
before that. So, I mean, unbelievable. I'm excited about what they've got going on. I feel like that you're looking at another Omaha trip for this team. I mean, obviously anything can happen, but again, they're the odds-on favorite to win it all, maybe besides Vanderbilt. I mean, that's where they're at.
I agree with you. And, Cops is part of the chemistry of that. And, Dave Van Horn did talk about Cops a little bit. And, since Cops got the Player of the Week awards, let's go ahead and hear what Dave Van Horn had to say about Cops.
We had a four-run lead when we brought him in the 8th. And I even said something to Coach Hobbs that maybe we ought to just go. We got somebody out there and give us 3 outs, and then we'll bring Kevin in the 9th. And Coach Hobbs just looked at me and said, "Kevin's fine." I said, "Okay." And good call. So by Coach Hobbs. And, he did a great job. He just filling up the zone, getting ahead of hitters, and threw a little bit of everything at him. It's not easy to do. And some days he makes it look easy.
So So that's Dave Van Horn again talking about Cops for pitching against South Carolina. And of course, the Player of the Week awards. A lot of people are sitting here going, how do you win National Player of the Week and have to share co-SEC honors? And that's the big question that a lot of people are having right now.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's almost ridiculous at this point. Like, I didn't even see the numbers that the other pitcher of the week had, but go back to Matt Goodhart last week. He got National Player of the Week, ends up as SEC Co-Player of the Week, and no, actually, he didn't even get SEC Player of the Week, did he? I think the guy from Alabama got it by himself. You look at the numbers, and it wasn't even close. Like, Matt Goodhart had a better week, and it wasn't even.
Yeah, I remember reading them, and I was like, "What is that?" Go ahead, but I 100% agree. It's kind of weird. I mean, it goes back to the old Arkansas thing. It's just kind of like, are we the redheaded stepchild of the SEC? You know what I'm saying?
It feels that way. It really does. And, I had an opportunity to ask Dave Van Horn about that during the press conference. And it makes sense what he had to say. So here's Dave Van Horn talking about Cops Player of the Week and having to share the SEC Player of the Week.
Well, those two groups don't work together. That's how. I mean, you've got the SEC, and they probably could care less what national people say. They're going to go on what they see. And I think Rocker had an incredible outing. Cops was an incredible 2 days for us. So I guess they decided to pick two of them. They couldn't decide on one, obviously. And then, collegiate baseball, they're out of Arizona. They're just kind of looking at some numbers and they make a decision. And so I get where the fans are coming from. But then again, I get it. There's great outings all over the place, whether it's a hitter or pitchers. And it's probably really, really difficult to select a guy. If somebody throws a perfect game and it's a big game and good competition, that might be easy. But when things are going on the way they go on in our league, it's so talented. I get the sharing thing. I wouldn't want to be in their shoes, honestly, picking those some weeks.
I want to thank Dave Van Horn for those comments as well. I could clear those up. I wanted to have an opportunity to ask him about that. And so that's what we did. But does that make sense to you guys? It's two different entities. One doesn't really rely on the other.
Yeah, right. I mean, the thing about Dave Van Horn, and you go back to the toughness conversation, this kind of ties in with that. Dave Van Horn doesn't care about that stuff.
Right.
He cares about winning, cares about getting his players in position to win, and the other stuff will follow. And that's what he says. I know for a fact, I know for a fact, I'm not in there, but I can tell you that behind the scenes, they're taking it as a slight. I can tell you that, but they're not going to dwell on it. But that's why Dave Van Horn is who he is. He's that guy.
Exactly.
I mean, right along the same lines is Arkansas is the number one team, ranked team in the country, and we're playing on the SEC, alternate. And, a lot of fans are feeling slighted by that as well. So, what does Razorbacks have to do? What do the Razorbacks have to do across all sports? What do we have to do to get that national media attention that says, hey, look, when you're ranked number one, you're going to be put on the primetime networks?
Yeah, I just feel like we just got to keep doing what we're doing, and that's winning. And those things eventually got to take care of themselves. You earn more respect. And, like Brad said, he's not going to talk about that, and that shows just how good of a coach he is. But it is something that I promise you they keep in the back of their mind. It's locker room fodder. I don't know if they're putting it out on news clippings, but it's definitely something that fuels the fire. I promise you. And Dave Van Horn, he's an Arkansas guy, so he's been there and done that. He understands that kind of stuff, and it's nothing but motivation for this team and for this coaching staff.
Brad, do you have anything else to add on that?
No, I think we got it covered.
All right, moving on. Another issue that is not only relevant to the Razorbacks, but anyone playing NCAA athletics right now, and that's the name, image, likeness. Players being paid for that. We see the resurgence of NCAA football, through EA Sports. We see those types of things coming back. What are your guys' thoughts on the name, image, and likeness debate?
Personally, I think that there's a dichotomy one of your words, Bill, that is here. The first thing is you cannot tell somebody that they cannot make money off themselves. It's America. You can't do that. I mean, everybody has a right to make money off of themselves. But this changes college sports across the board. Okay. I mean, across the board. Now, you think that cheating has been rampant. It's going to ramp up that much more. What are they going to say? Well, we can bring you here. We paid so-and-so $500,000 to step in for this car lot, you know, and they were able to make money off it. There's nothing you can do. You cannot regulate that. Then I'm going to say this. We hear a lot about how tough it is on college athletes, okay? My problem with that is it's not that their time is pressed. But as far as being taken care of, they're taken care of completely. I mean, who has private chefs? They already have cost of living into their scholarships, that sort of thing. I think I saw a study that said that they get like 20 grand worth of free stuff every year, plus on top of a college scholarship that they get that they don't have to pay anything back on. They can take advantage of that if they want to. Some people say that's not enough because it's $1 billion industry. Nowhere ever has there ever been somebody should get paid for how much everybody else is bringing in. Is it up to that person that's bringing that in? Sure. They can give a bigger cut if they want to. But let's remember, no matter what it is, this is not professional sports. This is still amateur sports to a certain extent, at least.
Yeah, it's the NCAA's kind of, they don't want to do this. They've been dragged into this. You know, state legislatures have been passing these for the last couple of years, California, Florida. So they're still had been fighting it, but it passed. And, you know, I want to see kind of what are the regulations? Is there any regulations? Are they going to make them split this money up amongst their team, amongst all of their, you know, they average about 400 student athletes at a college, you know, a D1 college for the most part. So let's say, you know, my biggest issue with it is if they don't split it up that way, that's going to cause locker room issues. Because think about it, your quarterback, or let's just say your left tackle, you know, left tackles get paid more in the NFL. This guy, let's say he's an all conference. Let's say your left tackle is a junior and he was all SEC as a sophomore. Okay. He gets some kind of deal with somebody to, you know, use his name, his image, his likeness, whatever. And he gets $100,000 for it. Well, your right guard over here, who was all conference, maybe second team. Okay. He does something for somebody else. He only gets 40,000. So now, you know, that's a big deal in your locker room. I mean, that's going to cause issues. And we're talking about two linemen there. Think about, you know, the quarterback's going to get way more than any other position because that's just how it works. So how does a coach deal with that? How do they combat all those extra things going on there? And, you know, that's my question is, are they going to say, hey, as a school here, you know, you've earned $600,000, for example. We're going to split it up among your 400 athletes. What's that going to come down to? You know, whatever the math is on that. I think the NCAA wants to regulate that still because it is amateurism, like you spoke about. So, but I don't know from what I've seen. I don't know if there's any rules, if there's any guidelines like that in place, or if it's just a free for all.
And that's where I stand, Duran, is, you know, I'm right along with you as far as how's that going to be dispersed, because that's going to create locker room issues. I don't see any way of avoiding that. And then, you know, to bring the whole transfer portal right now into it, that's going to exacerbate that even more. It's going to end up causing, but the two things going on together is going to be a symbiotic relationship that who's going to control.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and the problem is right now the NCAA is not controlling anything. I mean, you know, Will Wade's caught on FBI wiretap saying that he's going to have a strong offer for somebody, and they don't do anything about it, knowing that they paid these kids to come and play for them. So why not pay them? Because the NCAA is a toothless tiger at this point. And so, you know, right now it's already the wild, wild west. So I guess at this point you just come in, you do what you want. But my
Yeah.
question is not necessarily for Arkansas, but for schools like Arkansas State. Do they have to start their own division now because they can't keep up with the Joneses?
They
Yeah,
may
that's a
have
good
to.
point. You know, a lot of people worry about this whole situation, and there's always that let's let's not change anything. I don't want you to mess with my tailgating. I don't want you to just like with like conference realignments. There's always this scare there, like don't take Missouri out of the Big 12 because that's going to mess up my Missouri Kansas rivalry or what have you. But it's all worked out for the most part. But that people get really worried about all these kinds of things. They don't like change. They don't like nothing happening. They like their Final Four. They want to watch it. So I remember hearing a reporter tell a story about how when the NBA was having a lockout, that he was walking down the street or riding in a car or something with David Stern, and somebody hollered at him and was like, "Hey, he dropped some F bombs or whatever, and was like, I hate you. I'm never watching basketball again." And David Stern said to him, he said, "That's the guy I don't worry about, because if he's got that kind of passion to roll his window down and shout at me, then I've got him. He's going to come back. He's going to watch." But, there's a big fear out there that this is going to change the spectrum of everything. But we know that this is not a level playing field to begin with. I mean, look at Alabama. They've been preseason number 1, 13, 14 seasons in a row. I mean, there's not parity there already. There's already, the teams at the top. You got North Carolina, Duke in basketball, Kentucky, Kansas. You've got Alabama, Ohio State, those type of teams. And it's never been balanced, and it's basically the same thing, but now players can get paid. So I think a lot of people are worried about those kind of things. Back in the 80s when the Board of Regents case came through, and they were, conferences back then, the NCAA controlled all that, how often you could be on TV. And everybody was so scared that was going to saturate everything, that you couldn't, that it was going to ruin college football. Everybody would stay home and not watch it. But we got through that, and it was actually the best thing that ever happened to sports. Now, I can remember even up in the early 2000s, you still couldn't watch every game on TV. We're blessed nowadays where everything's on ESPN, and we're in SEC, so that helps us big time. But just about every Power 5 is now you can watch every game, football-wise, on TV.
And my question is,
baseball as well.
And my question, with that is,
right,
when you start getting into the pay of the image likeness and such, and the transfer portal, can you really call it amateur sports?
No. I mean, it's, of course, there's such a blurred line between it already. I'm not worried about amateurism as much as I guess I am that I feel like there's such an act about they're so mistreated and these sort of things. I have a problem with that because, again, who has a personal chef at home? I mean, just look at what the Razorbacks have,
Jones,
personal chefs, the Jones Study Center and all of that stuff, the absolute best training facilities that you can possibly have. Nobody has access to that. Medical care, the best medical care. And then again, you go back all the way to the scholarship. I still have student loans, and again, I'm not comparing me to them. I'm just saying it's not as bad as it looks. But again, when I go back to it all, you can't tell somebody they can't make money off themselves. That is not American. I mean, you have to be able to allow them to make money off themselves. I don't know how you regulate it.
You just want to play NCAA football again. Come on.
That's what I want.
Come on.
That's what I want. I want my dynasty set up again. I haven't played that gamut. I mean, I have the old ones that I used to play, but I'm ready for the new stuff.
There was nothing better than the top 5 Heisman finalists all being on your team, the Razorbacks, or some created school you made up,
Creating the greatest dynasty in the history of the world with the Razorbacks, right?
Now, the one thing, here's something to think about. The one thing that you can't do in NCAA football is you can't build up your football and your baseball teams at the same time. And that's what Arkansas is doing. You're building up football, you're building up baseball, and you're seeing that across all of the SEC. So let me ask you this. When you look at things in the grand scheme of things, you have SEC football and SEC baseball, What's tougher? What's harder to play in?
Brad, you can start out on this one.
Okay. I think the popular opinion is that football is because I think it's seen obviously more. I'm not sure baseball's not. Baseball, I've heard this said that baseball's like the AA affiliates of major leagues.
Some of the stadiums are even nicer.
Yeah, that's right. The benefits are better than other than signing bonuses for the high guys, the top guys. Some of these guys that come in with the huge signing bonuses, Heston Kjerstad, he got $7 million or whatever it is. But with that being said, you look at the rankings. I mean, at one point, I believe it was the top 5 schools were all SEC. I mean, yeah, you got 4 in the top 10 in college football from the SEC a lot of times, but you're talking about the very top 5 schools. You hear coaches talk, and I know they feel this way in football too, but you hear coaches talk about it in baseball. Van Horn has said it. He says, when we face a team in a regional, we're glad it's not the SEC. And then you also look at super regionals. The NCAA matches up 2 SEC schools quite a bit for super regionals so they can knock each other out. So when I look at it, I'm giving the notch to SEC baseball.
Yeah, I mean, you can argue it either way. I mean, they're both extremely tough, and I agree with you. Football at times, though, they also can be stacked just like that. I remember, was it Bielema's second year? We had Bielema's second year. We played. I remember that was when Dak Prescott was still at Mississippi State. They were number 1 in the country for a while. You had Alabama up there. It's been a while. Ole Miss, I think, was when they had it going with the coach that got in trouble with everything that's now at Liberty. His name escapes me. But anyways, so it was all rolling, and it's still rolling nowadays, But I remember that at that time we played I want to say we played the number 1 team 3 weeks in a row. It was insane. The only thing that it would maybe give me the nod for football would be because it's a physical game, and it's that physical SEC depth, the O-lines, the D-lines, and that wears on you. So I feel like if you put, just for an example, you put Oklahoma in baseball, I mean, it's still very tough, but I still feel like you put them in football, they can beat any SEC team in a bowl game where you got one game, you get prepared for it, you do all that, you get all your prep, and they can beat you on that one night. But you put them in the SEC West through a football conference, if they're losing in the Big 12 to teams like Army and Kansas State, I've got a feeling they're going to lose 3 or 4 more when they get beat down. Now, they're going to have years where they run the gauntlet, but for the most part, it's going to cause a big issue for you. And so I could argue either way, but either one of them are a tough road to hoe.
Here's how I see it is that, you're right. With football, it is much more physically demanding. You're probably more likely to have some injuries going on throughout the season. But with baseball, on the flip side, baseball is more of a, look, you're going to have 5 games this week. You may have 4 games this week. It's a grueling, long, race that you're having to go at. And, it's not a, hey, can I beat you one day a week? It's I'm going to have to beat you 3 times this week. And that makes it more and more complicated because all of these baseball schools, like you mentioned, we have great athletic programs. We have great facilities. Their training facilities are out of this world, and they do rival the professional levels. And so you have and everybody has this available to you. So I kind of feel like it's harder to make it through that long road down the baseball season than it is, a 15-game stretch.
I agree 100%. I'll also say this. Look at Arkansas, where they're at right now, 32-7 in the SEC in baseball. Went to Mississippi State, who is, I think they were number 4 coming into the weekend. Went to Vanderbilt, won 1 out of 2, or 1 out of 3, had a chance to win that 3rd game. Arkansas sweeps them. It speaks to how good the Razorbacks are this year.
Oh, yeah.
They're very, very, very good this year. Probably the best all-around team that Van Horn has had, including the 2018 team. Now, without without Blaine Knight. If you have a Blaine Knight on this team or an Isaiah Campbell, it's lights out.
Yes, and I agree. And we touched on that a little bit last week. The road victories that Arkansas have and the neutral site victories, Texas Tech, TCU number 10, Texas, and then, like you said, going to Mississippi State, beating Ole Miss. Now we've got South Carolina. Vanderbilt's amazing. Rocker and the other guy, they're two pitchers. I mean, they are insanely good, but you cannot not give Arkansas that number one spot. We have 100% earned it. And I'm one of those guys that kind of early on when we're number one, I was like, yeah, we're number one, but I get a little worried. I'm like, let's just slow the roll here a little bit. And not that I didn't think we were number one, but at the same time, it's baseball, and it's just like, is it early? We might get on a slump here, but we haven't. We've answered the call every week, and it's been such a fun ride to watch this year.
Well, baseball team, you can have a really good season, but you still have to deal with the likes of Alabama. SEC could be argued that, yeah, you're going to have 5 or 6 teams that are in the top 25, consistently. But I think the SEC in football is more top heavy. And when you look at D1 baseball's top 25, SEC has 4 of the top 6 and 19 of the top 25. The top 9, there are 7 SEC teams in the top 19 right now.
Yeah.
And so I think when you look at the gauntlet that a team would have to run through the SEC, at least at this season right now, I think baseball is a little tougher.
I mean, they're both tough. I mean, and the physicality of the West in football is really unbelievable. But when you look at it, there's one Nick Saban in the league. How many Nick Sabans are there in baseball? I mean, I'd put DVH up there with the Nick Sabans of the world. I mean, he hasn't won the national championships, but look at all the things that he's done here. Maybe not quite. I mean, who is as good as Nick Saban? Bill Belichick,
Right.
But other than that, I mean, maybe just a step below. But there's so many guys. Mike Bianco of Ole Miss, unbelievable manager. I mean, a fantastic guy. You could go down the list of guys that are so good in there, and so it's really an unbelievable league. And let me point one thing out before we move on. Went back to that record with Razorbacks, 32-7. I posted this before on the Arkansas Sports Network. 32-7 was the exact record that Arkansas had in '95 when they were runner-up in the national championship. 39 games, 32 wins is most in school history.
Right.
And you're the exact same record in baseball. It is much tougher to win in baseball than it is in basketball. And, I mean, you can have an off day in baseball much easier than you can in basketball. You're not going to out-athlete people in baseball. You've got to come in. You've got to pitch. You've got to hit. It's a much tougher game than basketball is. It's an unbelievable testament to what DVH has done with this program and what he is doing with this team.
Yeah, and, in baseball, you got those midweek games where you're resting your top guys for conference, and you play somebody like UALR or UCA or Arkansas State that's coming up in a few weeks, or somebody like of that nature, and that's their big game. They have been penciled that on the schedule since the very get-go, back in weeks before the season even started. And so that makes your record so much tougher in baseball. I 100% agree with you on that. 32-7. I think I commented on that post you made in the Arkansas Sports Network saying 33-6 would have been a little nicer, but Cameron Dollar and Kobe Bailey had to have the game of their lives that night, and we know the rest of that story. But still, that was a great year.
So it's a big week for the Hogs. They're not only the baseball team is in Baton Rouge, but you also have softball. Track is in Baton Rouge. So we're going to have a Baton Rouge party. Don't want anybody coming back smelling like corn dogs or anything. But that softball team, listen, they are going for it all. I had a tough series at home against Ole Miss, but was able to come back and win the last one of that. But we're looking at athletics across the board, and softball's one of them. They're doing pretty good.
Yeah, and Courtney Doffel's got it rolling, and it's been a long time coming. Softball's kind of been down. It's been that sport that's kind of been at the bottom for the most part of the SEC, and it's really been fun the last few years to see that get built up and to see where they're at. They got Mary Half and Braxton Burnside, she's actually leading the SEC, or she's leading the nation. She's tied with a girl from Oklahoma with 24 home runs to, that's the nation leading stat right there. So that's huge. We've got a couple other girls that got like 15. They're both in the top 15 in the nation. And it's been a lot of fun seeing them. They started off in that big streak where they didn't lose an SEC series, or didn't even lose an SEC game. And then they finally got Bama, and those were 3 excellent games. They all came down to the wire. We won 1 out of 2. And then this week against Missouri, Missouri got the best of us those first 2. But Monday night, Brookside, that's when she got that, or Burnside, sorry, that's when she got that 24th home run. And I think we got 13 hits in that game, and really put it on Mizzou to still win there. You don't want to get swept. So we were number 6. I haven't seen the newest rankings. We probably dropped a little bit, but they're really fun to watch.
They Absolutely. Are. I got to see some of the series with Ole Miss. Really fun to watch. The bats were moving when I was watching. What do you think, Brad?
Yeah, and the other one was Autumn Storms. Autumn Storms is a pitcher that they got back. She didn't pitch, or has been out, I guess, and she didn't pitch in the first 2 games, and came in and closed the game out against Missouri after they were threatening there at the end. But again, you're talking about toughness. SEC softball's right up there too.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got Alabama and Florida and LSU and all of those, everybody that we always hear about, fantastic team, fantastic record. Again, I'm a numbers guy, 38-7. I mean, that's an unbelievable record. And Courtney Deifel has done a great job. They're going to be they may be one of the top 8 seeds, going to be right in the mix for that, and possibly hosting the Super Regional. We don't have no idea what the NCAA is going to do with that. I mean, awaiting that word. That's going to be something to talk about probably. I believe they release those rankings and the hostings on May the 10th. So there'll be something to talk about there for sure at that point. But man, what a great run that the softball team has had. Again, you look at the program as a whole. I know DVH talked about that at the press conference today. It's just been a lot of fun.
It has, and that's the thing that I like about these coaching staffs is, they're all going to each other's events. You're going to see Coach Pittman at a baseball game. You're going to see Coach Pittman at a softball game. You're going to see DVH at a softball game. Right. They are interacting with each other. They're talking to each other, and they are having a blast doing it. And that is one of the things that Dave Van Horn talked about this week at his press conference. Let's go ahead and listen to that.
Well, we talked about it this morning on our staff. We met for a few minutes, talked about that. I think softball doesn't play till Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I may be wrong there, that's right. They're playing on Saturday night, same time we're playing. If they're playing a day game, we'd probably run over and watch a couple innings, just get out of the hotel, do something. And I knew Track was down there as well on Saturday. So hopefully they do well. Big weekend for softball. They're trying to win an outright championship. They need to win a couple of games. They might be in really good shape. So really pulling for Courtney and the girls, the young ladies. And I always say girls because I had 2 daughters, and that's who I always called them. But I went over and watched them play a couple of times this weekend, and they're really good. They're really good. Missouri's really good too, and they struggled a little bit, but they bounced back Monday. That was a huge win, and sometimes it just happens. It's tough to beat people every weekend. Happy for them and their program. Track is just always good. So they're fun to watch. We follow each other. We pull for each other. We all text each other back and forth. Coach Buckner, myself, Coach Harder, Courtney, and a lot of us. We're pulling for each other. Just like when Coach McMakin's golf team was so close this past weekend, we were all following it. We've had a tremendous year this year with all the programs. I mean, you look at it, soccer and basketball, football got better and going to get better. I mean, you all know this and you've written about it, but our athletic department has had an incredible year. If you're just talking about wins, academically, I think it's been as good a year as I've seen, and I've been here a long time now. And it's been fun to be a part of it.
So, yeah, it sounds like Dave Van Horn and everybody's having a pretty good time up there.
Yeah, and Hunter Yurchek's done a good job of kind of keeping that all fluid group, and they're all supporting each other, and that's big. And, we talked about softball a little bit. All these years, I got a softball background, coach softball. my wife, she's from Benton. They went to the state championship when she was a 10th grader. She's got two sisters that won state championships. And there's been so much talent in the state of Arkansas. It's always frustrated me that the program was really where it was, for all those years. And it's really awesome to see them come to this point. And, they're a top 10 team now and just really doing a good job. And the talent is here in softball and baseball. It always has been, and basketball to really sustain some really good teams.
It is. And, this is the year that I really wish that COVID wasn't affecting, the attendance levels, because Bogga Park, man, let me tell you, that thing is going to be going nuts, if it was packed this season. Unfortunately, the crowd was limited and it didn't get the impact that we were looking for. But even as it is, it's a great season for softball.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's just, I keep saying this, I keep echoing it. It's been a lot of fun. I mean, as a Razorback fan, you've been a long-suffering Razorback fan for quite a while. Outside of baseball, there really hasn't been a lot to cheer about. And then all of a sudden, everybody starts winning at one time. And wow. You're looking for the football team now to take that next step from where they were. And, I mean, get up to a ball game next year with a new quarterback. I mean, there's no telling what the Razorback fan base will do. And you're hearing rumors. I don't want to go into those rumors right now because I don't want somebody to come back and quote me on what might happen. But the basketball team, could they get a shot in the arm here? And, I mean, if they do, I mean, you're talking about a team that could be one of the favorites to win it all as well. Yeah. I mean,
you're already getting a lot coming back. Yeah. And if the rumor is true, if it is true and we get that extra guy back, I mean, it's just going to be huge. But we don't know if that's going to be true or not. That's the thing is you'll hear these things. And, sometimes they are true, sometimes they're not. And we don't know. It's almost too good to be true as far as I see it, but it would be huge.
Yeah. Could you imagine Chris Likes how you can't stop that guy. He can get anywhere he wants basically through your defense. Him and Devo, and you got the incoming transfers that we've already got that you got Stanley Umudi. I was thinking that's how you pronounce it. The guy from South Dakota. He's kind of built like Justin Smith, about 6'6", 210, a little smaller, but he can post you up. He's kind of can play that swing spot as well. Having guys like that you can lob it to, and Chris Leak's dissecting you. Devo has great vision, and if those rumors come to fruition, that would be really, really exciting. And you've got to pick us a top 5 team, I would think, at that point going into the season.
You're already in a lot of people's top 5 right now. Yeah. I don't know, man. Like, it's blowing my mind at this point. I mean, like I said, it's just been so long, and then all of a sudden you start winning at one time, and it's just like, what's happening? Like, is this too good to be true? And we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Right.
We're also going to see what happens this weekend at LSU, a big road trip for the Omahogs as we continue our track to get to Omaha. And, LSU, that's one of those teams that you look at traditionally, and they're a tough series. I want to say the last time that we swept them back was in 2004 at LSU. So, I mean, it's been a long, long time since we've been able to get that sweep. And I think, Dave Van Horn's probably thinking about that.
Without a doubt. And LSU has owned Arkansas in baseball. I mean, let's just be honest. 2019, they won the series. Arkansas did. It was the year before, 18, when Arkansas went to Alex Box Stadium, the team that went to the national championship game and should have won it, and they get beat. 2011 was the last time that Arkansas had beaten LSU in a series. You go to the College World Series a couple times, LSU's knocking you out. In 2009, LSU knocks them out. They beat them twice in the series. I mean, LSU has owned Arkansas in a lot of ways, but that's flipped now as far as where the programs are, because the programs have been, LSU's been the top of Arkansas. Right now, Arkansas is on top of LSU. Now,
LSU's not even in the top 25.
That's crazy too, by the way. You're talking about SEC baseball.
Losing record.
SEC baseball, LSU's not in the top 25. Think about that. But anyway, LSU's playing better, though. That's where I'm getting to
definitely
right now. And that's a scary part of this series.
Yeah, they just had that big weekend win, and you're 100% right. And we're playing at Baton Rouge. And, that 2004 year that we swept them, that was Van Horn's first season. And there was a couple, I think he talked about it in his presser, there was a couple plays late where they made from right field plays at home to one of them went into extra innings where they threw the guy out to extend the game. I think they did it 2 innings in a row. That was a really good Arkansas team that year. And it's so hard to win down there. And it's so hard to beat them at home. Remember the Possum game? I talked about it a little bit last week where, we're what was that? We were up 10-0, 10-1, something of that nature. And they come back and you're just sitting there and it was just like watching a train fall off the tracks. And they come back and got that big victory. And we talk about the corn dog stuff, but I have no love for LSU. I don't even like saying the word. I usually say LSU, but I went down to Baton Rouge in 2003 with a bunch of friends from work. And that was the year that they won the national championship. Saban was there. And Chad Lavallee was their big defensive end, and that was the year that was Matt Jones's last year, and Cedric Cobbs was on that team. To Corey Birmingham, they hadn't given up a rushing touchdown all year, and we go down there and we scored. I mean, all year. That was the final game of the season, the day after Thanksgiving. I remember because I stayed up all night. And we drove all the way down there and had the worst plan, and it was an all nighter, but an all day, and we were wore out, but. We scored a rushing touchdown on them in the first half. And, we were just going nuts. There was about 10 of us Razorback fans in the middle of about 90,000 LSU probably about 40,000 in our little section. There was a few other Razorback fans, but they were on the far side of the stadium. And, man, they had an earful and they were upset and people were leaving. And then second half came around and we found out why they went on to win the national championship that year. I think it was 55-24. They blew us out. But, I have no love for the Tigers, and I've had a best friend that was from there, and he used to call me every year. I don't know if y'all remember, but for a long time, whoever was home would win, and it would alternate for several years there. And every year I wouldn't hear from him. He lived out of state. He moved back to Louisiana, and he'd call me the day they beat us. Like,
it's
man,
a big series.
It's
a big series for the Hogs. Dave Van Horn knows about it, and you talked about that 2004 game, and Dave Van Horn did too. So here's what Dave Van Horn had to say about the series with LSU.
Well, 2004 is the year you're talking about that we swept them. There were some really good games. I remember Friday night's game was a good game. Saturday's game, it seemed like we went extra innings. I remember Blake Parker throwing out a runner at the plate in the bottom of the ninth to extend the game and the bottom of the 10th to extend the game from right field. And then we scored some run in the 11th and won. It was a crazy game. And on Sunday we won again. We also won the conference championship that year. So we had a good team. But yeah, it's been a tough place for us and it's a tough place to win a series. And I think with this team that we have a chance to win a series anywhere we go. So I wouldn't say that they're having a tough year or a bad year. I just think that maybe some things haven't gone their way. They have a lot of talent, and they've had an injury on the mound that hurt them early in the season or a few weeks back, and they seem to be playing really well now. So it's going to be a great challenge for us. I think they're very athletic. They've got some really good freshmen that are playing really well for them. So you mix in some of the older guys and veterans, and you saw, they were within a few outs or maybe one out really in the bottom of that eighth inning at Ole Miss from sweeping Ole Miss on the road. And I know how hard it is to sweep anybody, but especially Ole Miss at their ballpark. So they're capable, like any team in the league, of having a great weekend and getting after you pretty good. So, we're not taking anybody lightly, obviously. We have 4 weekends of SEC play left, and we only have one non-conference game, so we've had time to work and rest and think and get ready for this series, and we know it's a big series.
So again, he puts that in perspective. It's going to be a big matchup for LSU and Arkansas, and it's unusual for Arkansas to be on top of LSU in the rankings and LSU not to be on the radar, and so we've had a lot of rest. All of our pitching should be well rested. We can pitch anybody we want. Like Brad was saying at the beginning of the show, we don't even know who's going to start on week 3. They said in that press conference that Wicklander is going to start game 1. Paulette's going to come out in game 2. There's a lot of options for game 3.
Yeah, there is.
Go ahead.
There is. There's definitely a lot of options there, and we're going to see what happens, I think it helps Arkansas to keep that kind of under wraps a little bit. I still think Arkansas is searching a little bit for that third starter, knowing who that is. Is it Vermillion? Is it, Connor Noland? I mean, is it him? We don't know right now who it's going to be, but we're going to find out pretty soon.
Connor Noland could come in any one of those games in a relief situation. It doesn't matter if this is, game 1, 4th inning or game 2, 2nd inning. It's entirely possible that we see Connor Noland back in action this weekend. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, DVH, he said that Connor, they threw a pin and he looked pretty good. He threw a lot of strikes. So there's a good chance I think we're going to really get to see him play this weekend for the first time since he got injured. I'm excited about that. He also talked about Lockhart or Vermillion. He said those are just the two names he threw out right off the top of his head that have a good chance of starting that third game that's TBA right now. But we'll see how the weekend goes and everything that goes into it, and before we get to game 3 and what decisions they make. But I'm excited for it, and I really think we got a good opportunity to win a series at LSU, and like we talked about, that does not happen very often.
And it's not only a big weekend for the baseball team, but also softball and track, also in Baton Rouge at the same time. So it's a big weekend down in Baton Rouge for the Hogs. Brad, you look like you had something.
Well, I was just going to say, let me touch on this. And again, I'm a big picture guy, but when you think about all those names that he just threw out for the possible starting or the third pitcher, I mean, think about the fact that Lockhart's been the guy, but if he could move to the bullpen, and throw some. Connor Noland, possibly. Vermillion, possibly. Then you've got Cops stealing souls. I mean, it's
Monk,
pretty crazy.
Blake Adams. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Blake Adams hadn't even hardly pitched.
Oh, and Cole Ramage, he also threw some, and he looked decent. So he's another guy that I really expected. I kind of expected him to be the Cops of this season before the season started. And for whatever reasons, he's, not quite been there. But if we can get him going as well, man, I mean, that's nasty. That's nothing.
Cops is
nasty. No manager wants to look at that.
I know. And the Cops, his slider, the movement on that, he will get a guy swinging. It's a nasty pitch when he gets it going, and it's very effective. And I think there's a lot of guys on Arkansas that can have that shutdown potential. I did expect Ramage, like you. I expect Ramage to be one of those guys that was in that position. We've seen glimpses of it this year. We haven't seen a Cops-like type performance from Ramage, but he has it in him.
Absolutely. There's just a plethora of guys that they've got a chance to go to. And again, if you could continue to round this thing into shape, I really don't think that Arkansas's played their best baseball just yet. And that is scary.
Yeah. When you're leading the nation in just about every category known to man, you're swinging the bat better than anybody else. You're getting walks, getting walked better than anybody else. Your pitching is top notch. Look, we're the number 1 team in the country, and rightfully so.
I'm looking forward to going to the Tell the Tape next week. I'm going to try to do some research on that. I know a lot of people look at Vanderbilt as, the team that may be better than Arkansas. They've got 2 top-end starters that you definitely would probably take over Arkansas, but I'm not sure they got anything else at this point that would be better than Arkansas. I'm going to check. I don't know for sure, but I'm interested to see what that looks like.
Right. Yeah, I don't want to see Kumar Rocker in a regional or the World Series, a super regional or the World Series, but which we shouldn't meet up in the supers. But but honestly, their other guy, he throws heat. I mean, 98 miles an hour, and he's nasty. But I would like our chances against him more than I do Rocker, just because I hate those nasty curveballs. I get flashbacks to the Oregon State freshman throwing 15 innings or whatever the crap he did. You know how it was. But we've done a better job of hitting the curveball this year, in my opinion, as well. And I think it's been a little bit more of a point of emphasis over the last couple of seasons to kind of hit that more often and do a better job. Casey Martin, I remember he struggled on that some over his progression through the years, but I mean, Vanderbilt's really good. And, but I honestly think if you add the pieces we have out of the bullpen, we didn't even talk about Wiggins. We haven't even brought his name up. This dude's an absolute stud. And, but all the pieces we have in our lineup, if I was a betting man and I was in Vegas, I'm taking the Hogs.
You have to. I mean, we're leading the way for a reason.
Because I'm from Arkansas.
Well, right. But I mean, when I look at it, I see, we beat Memphis twice. They only beat them once. So, I mean, you can look at that, but it's going to be a big time. That's even bigger than LSU. But one other thing, sometimes you just got to go and dry on these segues. But one last thing that we kind of want to touch on is the football transfer portal. We're getting a little bit of news coming out of that.
Yeah, absolutely. John Ridgeway III, big one there. That's the one that everybody's talking about. All Missouri Valley Conference in 2019, out of the nose guard position, had 50 tackles, and 28 of them were solo. Big fella, big old corn-fed boy from Illinois. I tell you what, he looks pretty good. Interesting how that Arkansas offered him first, and then it was like, man, it was like just everybody comes in.
Yeah, and I don't want to like bring up Bielema here, but I'm going to. But if you think of his playing days, not what happened with him at Arkansas, but he kind of reminds me of that because Bielema was a walk-on at Iowa, corn-fed like we're talking about, and turned himself into an All-American there, D-tackle, nose guard, and Ridgeway reminds me of him to an extent, and just a big old boy that, like you said, 50 tackles, 28 solo. A lot of people don't understand that, but when you're playing nose guard, those numbers right there are eye-catching. That you're getting double teamed multiple times, almost every play, and to have 28 solos, I don't care if you're playing in the Illinois State's conference or not. That's impressive. The other guy we got is Markel Utsi from Missouri, and that's a big pickup right there. He's going to transfer over to us, so we lose some. We lost Woods to OU. We pick up a guy like Utsi from Missouri. So, that's the world we live in this transfer portal where there's no, you get this one-time free get out of jail card basically where you can go anywhere. And, you're going to see more of that. We also lost Enoch Jackson last week, and he had a sack in the red-white game. I think it was a first drive, or not, it might have been the first or second drive, but he got a big sack in that game, and I was liking what I was saw out of him, but we replaced him with 2 D tackles right there, and that was already a spot that we were a little concerned with, that nose guard spot, after we lost the big man last year to the NFL, but or he's probably going to get drafted here, I think. But anyways, a couple other guys that we got in. We didn't talk about this much, but, we lost Woods to OU, wide receiver, but we got Jaquelin Crawford last year from OU, and that guy's electric. Woods is fast, but Crawford's more in that, I'd say, Devion Warren top physique, 5'9", 165, just a jitterbug, can kind of, he's a slot machine kind of guy. That's one of the guys we got in. Can y'all think of any others that have came into us?
Not off the top of my head. I was sitting there thinking
Renfro,
the
Ole Miss quarterback.
Ridgeway transfer. I saw some of his video, and I mean, this dude is pushing centers into the backfield, and I mean, he's a big, wide guy, and when you disrupt that offensive line to that point, you're gonna have to put a guard on him. You're gonna have to put somebody, an extra guy on Ridgeway to cover it, and that just gives you a +1. Defensively. So, that's going to be huge if Ridgeway continues to perform at the SEC level here at Arkansas.
And let's hope that he does. Let's hope.
Right.
I mean, that's the biggest thing. The biggest question is, can he perform at the SEC level? Sure. We know he can perform at the lower level. He's dominated that lower level. So now what's his opportunity? And like you said, with the transfer portal, it's going to happen more. But this is actually the benefit, in my opinion, of the transfer portal is guys on the lower level getting a chance to play on an upper level to showcase their abilities.
Right. Yeah. And like in basketball, Musselman, he's perfected this. And like guys like Jalen Tate, from Kentucky, Western Kentucky, coming in here and doing the things he did, getting on the Elite Eight run. That was not going to happen where he was, so guys like that definitely benefiting from it. A couple other pickups. I remember, I said already, Cade Renfro from Ole Miss. He played in the red-white game. Looked pretty good, honestly. I like some of the passes he made. And then there was Trent Gordon, and I think he's going to help us. He was a Penn State defensive back, and I think he's going to help us back there in that secondary at corner, maybe some nickel as well. But those are just some guys off the top of my head that I can remember that we've picked up in that portal.
Brad, anything to add to that?
I'm good, man. I think we covered it.
Well, that's pretty much it. Wait for the Hogs to go down to do LSU, eat some corn dogs while they're down there, tear them up. It's going to be a good weekend for athletics here in the state of Arkansas. I look forward to watching all of that. And, you can be a part of it next week right here. And as always, don't forget to stay connected to
The Razor Wire.